What would you do if your own daughter sent you an email that said, "Don't come to my wedding. Just watch it on livestream"? That happened to me. And instead of crying or begging, I made one quiet decision that changed everything. By the way, this is a brand new channel, and your support truly means the world to me. If you enjoyed this story, please hit that subscribe button, give the video a like, and help me reach my first 1,000 subscribers. And when you subscribe, drop a comment below telling me what number subscriber you are. I'd love to see how this community is growing, one person at a time. My name is Helen Morgan. I'm 58 years old, a widow, and I live in a small town just outside of Denver, Colorado. For the past 25 years, I've worked as an administrator at a medical clinic. It's steady work, not glamorous, but it paid for the roof over our heads and for 2 children I raised mostly on my own. My daughter, Anna, is 31. My son, Michael, is 28. I've spent my adult life making sure they had opportunities I could only dream about when I was their age. Last Thursday, I opened my email at the kitchen table. The subject line was blank, just Anna's name. At first I smiled. I thought maybe it was a quick note, maybe even a thank you for helping her plan the wedding. Just last month I wired $30,000 so she could lock in the venue, book the florist, and secure the photographer she wanted. I thought this email would be an update, but when I clicked it open, my smile faded. It began with one word. Not "Dear Mom," not even "Hey Mom," just Mom. Her words were short, almost cold. Anna explained that after going over the guest list with her fiancé, Jason, and his family, they had decided it would be best if I didn't come in person. They wanted to keep things simple and intimate. Her solution? She told me I could watch the entire wedding through a live stream link. "It'll be just like being there," she wrote, as if watching my only daughter walk down the aisle on a computer screen could ever compare. At the very end, she added 3 letters that sliced deeper than the rest. LOL, like it was a joke. I stared at that email until my coffee turned cold. My hands didn't shake. I didn't cry. Something inside me shifted, like the ground split beneath my feet, but I was still standing. I typed just 4 words in response. "Sure, enjoy your day." No argument. No begging, just silence wrapped in a sentence, because sometimes silence is louder than any scream. I closed the laptop, poured the rest of my coffee down the sink, and got ready for work like it was any ordinary Thursday. But it wasn't. That was the day I realized my sacrifices had turned invisible. That was the day I knew things would never be the same. The drive to the clinic was quiet. Early spring in Colorado still carried a bite in the air, but I hardly noticed. My thoughts kept circling the same question. How did we get here? For 25 years, I've balanced checkbooks, skipped vacations, sold jewelry, and worked overtime just so my kids never had to feel the kind of scarcity I grew up with. I remember the week my husband, Daniel, died of a heart attack. Michael was still in high school. Anna had just started college. The bills piled high on the kitchen counter, and I stood over them trying to figure out whether to pay for groceries or her dorm deposit. I didn't think twice. I skipped meals, took extra weekend shifts, cut coupons, and told myself there would be time for me later. There never was. When Anna switched majors twice and needed extra credits, I paid. When she moved to Seattle for a job that lasted 6 months, I covered her first and last month's rent. When she called me sobbing after her second breakup, I booked a flight and sat with her in that little apartment, making soup and reminding her she was loved. When Michael wanted to buy his first home, I co-signed the mortgage and handed over a check for $10,000 to help with the down payment. I never kept score. That's what mothers do, right? But Anna's email made me feel like a bank account with legs, like I had an expiration date. When I got to the clinic, my boss, Dr. Patterson, noticed something was off. He's one of those rare men who actually listens. He stopped by my desk and said, "Helen, you look like you just saw a ghost." He handed me a cup of tea from the cafe downstairs. Chamomile. He remembered. I wanted to tell him the truth. My daughter just uninvited me from her wedding. But instead, I smiled weakly and said I didn't sleep well. That small kindness, a cup of tea, no questions asked, nearly undid me. After all the noise in my head, It reminded me that I still existed, that I still mattered. Around lunch, my phone buzzed. Anna again. Her name lit up my screen like a spotlight I didn't want. Voicemails, texts. Mom, please answer. We need to talk. This isn't funny, but I didn't listen. Not yet. For the first time, I thought maybe it was time to stop answering. Maybe it was time to stop bending myself into shapes just to fit someone else's story. That afternoon, I made a decision. A quiet, steady decision that would shake the ground beneath us all. After work, I didn't drive straight home. Instead, I turned left and pulled into the parking lot of First Western Bank. Carlos, the branch manager, smiled as soon as he saw me. Mrs. Morgan, always a pleasure. What can I do for you today? I set my purse down and folded my hands. My voice was calm. Almost too calm. I need to cancel a wire transfer, I said. His eyebrows rose. The one for the Aspen Ridge wedding venue? Yes, I replied. That one. Carlos blinked at me from behind his desk. There may be a cancellation fee depending on timing, he said carefully. But may I ask why? The circumstances have changed, I answered, steady as stone. He tapped at his keyboard, glanced at the screen, then looked back up at me. You're in luck. The transfer hasn't processed yet. Just in time, he paused. Are you sure, Mrs. Morgan? That's $50,000. A significant amount? I nodded. I'm sure. $50,000. That was the next payment I had planned to send on top of the $30,000 already gone. $80,000 for a wedding I had now been told I wasn't welcome to attend. I signed the forms with a clear hand. No hesitation. No second thoughts. When I walked out of the bank into the chilly spring air, it was like a weight slid off my shoulders. For the first time in decades, I had said no. By the time I got home, my phone was vibrating nonstop. 9 missed calls from Anna, 2 from Michael. One voicemail from Anna simply said, Mom, please don't do this. I turned the phone off. In the kitchen, I reached for a bottle of red wine I'd been saving for Thanksgiving years ago. Anna was supposed to visit that holiday, but she canceled at the last minute. Work, she had said. I poured a glass, stepped onto the back porch, and watched the sunlight fade across the Rockies. The air smelled faintly of pine. A neighbor's dog barked in the distance. Everything around me felt calm. But inside, memories crashed like waves. The birthdays I planned alone. The Christmas dinners where I set the table for 3, waiting for Anna to arrive, only to get a last-minute text saying she couldn't make it. The vacations I never took. The new shoes I never bought. The old car I drove for 14 years. Sacrifices no one ever noticed. And now I was being told to watch her wedding through a screen, while Jason's mother, a woman who barely knew Anna, sat front and center. I swirled the wine in my glass and thought not about being a mother, not about being a widow, but about being a woman. What do I want? The answer came quietly. Peace. Dignity. A life that didn't revolve around proving my worth to people who only called when they needed something. At 9 p.m., the doorbell rang. For a moment, I considered ignoring it, but curiosity got the better of me. It was Michael, still in his office clothes, tie loosened, sleeves rolled. He looked tense, phone in one hand like a shield. Mom, he said, stepping inside before I could speak. Why aren't you answering your phone? Anna's freaking out. I closed the door behind him. Hello to you too, he sighed, already pacing. She says you're not coming to the wedding now. That you're being difficult. I let out a sharp laugh. Difficult? For not attending a wedding I was uninvited from. He froze mid-step. Andrew's parents are paying for most of it, Mom. You know how traditional they are. Guest lists, seating charts, it's their way. I raised an eyebrow. Traditional? Michael, I already paid $30,000, and I was about to give $50,000 more. That's not tradition. That's a business deal. His eyes widened. Wait, you were sending another 50? Was, I said, sipping my wine. Not anymore. Michael's face drained of color. Mom, they're counting on that. The venue, the caterer, Not my problem anymore. I cut in, steady and firm. His voice rose. Of course, it's your problem. She's your daughter. And I'm her mother, I said, my tone low but sharp. A mother who was told to stay home and watch from a live stream. He ran his hands through his hair, frustrated. You always make everything about yourself. That was it. That was the moment something inside me broke free. Get out of my house. What? You heard me, Michael. Get out, Mom. No, I said, firm but calm. I've given everything I had, and I'm done being painted as the villain in a story I wrote with love. You don't get to rewrite that. For a moment, he stood there staring at me, stunned. Then he turned, walked to the door, and slipped out without another word. The click of the door closing behind him was louder than any slam. I stood in the center of my living room, heart pounding, waiting for guilt to flood in, but it didn't. Instead, I felt something startling: freedom. The next morning, I woke to 43 missed calls and dozens of frantic texts from Anna. The first few were sharp, guilt-ridden. Mom, we need to talk. Why are you doing this? This is childish. But then the tone shifted. The venue just called. The payment didn't go through. We're going to lose everything if we don't pay by tomorrow. Jason's parents are furious. They said this proves they were right about you. At 3:24 a.m., one more. I don't understand why you're doing this to me. I sat at the kitchen table, sipping my coffee, smiling faintly. Of course, she didn't understand. She had grown up with my sacrifices woven so tightly into her life, she never questioned where the stability came from. She assumed I'd always be there, ready to write another check, ready to clean up every mess. But not this time. Later that morning, as I reviewed paperwork at my desk, an email popped up in my personal inbox. The subject line read, "Please don't ruin my wedding." I stared at it for a long moment before I clicked it open. The subject line glared at me. "Please don't ruin my wedding." I clicked it open without expectation. "Mom," Anna wrote, "I know you're upset about the live stream situation, but this is extreme. We've lost the venue deposit, and if we don't pay the remaining balance by end of day Paris time, the caterer walks. Jason's parents are beyond upset. They're saying this proves you can't be reasoned with. Please don't do this. We can talk about you attending the ceremony, but we need the funds first." There it was. Not an apology, not reflection, a negotiation. My presence at my own daughter's wedding wasn't a matter of love. It was a bargaining chip, something that could be traded, as if my worth could be measured in dollar signs. I didn't reply. I closed the email and went back to work. Around noon, Dr. Patterson appeared at my desk. "Lunch?" he asked. That new Italian place opened down the block. Normally, I would have declined. Work was safe, predictable. But something shifted in me over the past 24 hours. Maybe it was exhaustion. Maybe it was clarity. Either way, I nodded. I'd like that. We sat over plates of pasta, the clatter of dishes filling the silence between us. He told me stories about his grandchildren, how exhausting and beautiful it was to chase them around the backyard. His eyes softened when he spoke about them. After a pause, he looked at me and said gently, "Forgive me, Helen, but you seem lighter today." And for the first time, I didn't pretend. I told him everything. About Anna's email, about the $30,000 already gone, about the $50,000 I almost sent, about the live stream, about canceling the transfer. When I finished, he didn't interrupt. He didn't judge. He simply said, "Sometimes the hardest part of love is drawing a boundary, especially with the people we've given the most to." He reached across the table and squeezed my hand. Briefly, but firmly. And for the first time in a very long time, I believed I had done the right thing. When I returned home that evening, the sky was already dim. The porch light flicked on automatically. My driveway looked quiet, calm, but someone was sitting on the front steps. As I drew closer, I recognized her immediately. Lena, Anna's best friend since the 5th grade. She had spent countless weekends in our house, baking cookies in the kitchen, staying up too late on sleepovers, giggling in the basement until dawn. I hadn't seen her in years. "Mrs. Morgan," she said softly, standing quickly and brushing invisible lint off her coat. "Lena," I replied, unlocking the door. "Would you like some tea?" She followed me inside, eyes scanning the familiar walls like they held old echoes. When the kettle began to whistle, I finally asked, "Anna sent you, didn't she?" Lena hesitated, then nodded. She's a mess. They lost the venue. The florist dropped out. Jason's parents are furious. The whole thing's unraveling. I poured hot water into 2 mugs and said nothing. She's panicking, Lena continued. She knows she messed up. She just doesn't know how to fix it. Is that why you're here? I asked. To fix it for her? She shook her head. No, I'm here to ask you, is there anything she can say or do that would change your mind? I stood there, mug in hand, frozen. Was there? Could an apology undo the way it felt to be told I wasn't welcome? To feel like a bank account instead of a mother? I looked at Lena, still so young, still hopeful. And I said the truth. No, there isn't, her shoulders sagged. Not even if she apologizes? I handed her a cup. Words are easy, Lena, especially when people are desperate. But real love doesn't wait until you cut them off to finally see you. She lowered her eyes to the tea. I get it, she whispered. Even if she doesn't. I'm sorry, Mrs. Morgan. You don't need to be, I said gently. For a moment, we stood in silence. 2 women from different generations connected by one hard truth. Sometimes love has limits. Sometimes the only way to be seen is to step away. Lena didn't argue. She didn't beg. She simply thanked me, hugged me gently, and left. When I closed the door behind her, it felt heavier somehow, like I had shut it not only on her, but on an entire version of myself I had outgrown. The wedding never happened, at least not the way they planned. Without the venue, without the caterer, without the endless flow of my money, everything fell apart. According to Michael, they scrambled and eventually threw together a small backyard ceremony with Jason's parents and a handful of relatives. I wasn't invited, and this time I didn't need to be. In the weeks that followed, Anna sent me one more email. It was long, emotional, half apology, half excuse. I read it once, then archived it. I wasn't angry anymore, just done. There's a strange peace that comes when you finally let go. Not in rage, not in tears, but in clarity. For the first time in decades, I woke up without wondering who needed something from me. I stopped bracing myself for the next guilt trip dressed as love. I made a rule for myself. If my presence is negotiable, then so is my effort. These days, I go to work. I read novels. I joined a pottery class. I have dinner with friends who see me, not what I can give them. And I learned something I wish I had known 20 years ago. You don't have to set yourself on fire to keep other people warm. The weeks after the unraveling of Anna's wedding passed in a blur, but not the kind of blur I was used to. For once, the haze wasn't exhaustion. It was freedom. Every morning, I woke up before my alarm. I'd sit at the kitchen table with a fresh cup of coffee, sunlight spilling across the counter, and realize something startling. Nobody needed me. Nobody was waiting on me to fix their crisis. Nobody was demanding a check or a sacrifice disguised as love. At first, the silence felt eerie, like standing in an empty church after the congregation has gone home. But slowly, I began to see it for what it was: peace. One Saturday afternoon, I drove into downtown Denver. For years, I'd told myself I didn't have time for hobbies, that maybe once the kids were settled, maybe once retirement came, maybe someday. Someday never arrived, until now. I walked into a pottery studio with a beginner's wheel throwing class sign in the window. My palms were sweaty as I paid the fee, sat down at a wheel, and touched the cool clay. The instructor, a kind woman named Marisol, guided us gently. As the wheel spun beneath my hands, I pressed and shaped, watching a lump of clay slowly rise into something recognizable. My fingers trembled, clay streaked my shirt, and my first bowl collapsed in on itself, and I laughed. Not a polite laugh. A belly laugh, the kind I hadn't heard from myself in years. The following week, Dr. Patterson stopped by my desk again. "You seem different," he said, raising an eyebrow. I smiled. "Lighter?" He chuckled. "Exactly." I told him about pottery class, about how terrible I was, but how much fun it had been. He listened, nodding. Then he said something simple but profound. "Helen, you're finally living for you." The words lingered. I carried them home, repeating them in my head as I cooked dinner for one, as I curled up on the couch with a novel, as I let myself take up space in my own life. One evening, while scrolling through my email, I saw another message from Anna. My chest tightened. I clicked it open. This one was different. No negotiations. No demands. Just paragraphs of raw words. Guilt, sorrow, defensiveness, regret. She wrote that the backyard wedding had been nice but not the dream. That Jason's parents barely spoke to her afterward. That she realized too late how much she had hurt me. Part of me wanted to reply. To tell her I understood, to offer comfort like I always had. But then I remembered the new rule. If my presence is negotiable, so is my effort. So I read it once. Then I archived it, not out of anger, not out of revenge, but out of self-respect. Life didn't suddenly become perfect. There were lonely nights when the quiet pressed too close. Days when I questioned if I had been too harsh. But every time doubt crept in, I reminded myself, boundaries aren't walls. They're doors. And people who truly love you will walk through them, not demand you tear them down. Michael eventually called. His voice was hesitant, almost boyish, like the teenager he once was. "Mom," he said quietly, "I'm sorry. I shouldn't have yelled. I didn't understand." For the first time, I didn't rush to fill the silence. I let him sit in it. "Thank you for saying that," I said finally. It wasn't a full repair, but it was a start. In pottery class, I got better. My bowls stopped collapsing. I even made a vase that held water without leaking. Marisol clapped her hands when I lifted it from the wheel. "See? Patience and pressure," she said. "That's what makes it hold." Her words echoed deeper than clay. Patience and pressure. That's what had shaped me too. Years of sacrifice, of struggle, of silent strength, and now, finally, I was holding. One Sunday, I drove up into the Rockies. Alone, no kids in the backseat. No one to entertain. Just me, the winding roads and the mountains rising like old, steady guardians. I pulled over at a scenic overlook, wrapped in a sweater against the chill, and watched the sun dip behind the peaks. The sky lit up in streaks of orange and purple, as if painting a reminder just for me. Endings can be beautiful too. I closed my eyes and whispered to myself, "You're allowed to be happy, Helen. Even now. Especially now." Back at home, I started saying yes to things I once pushed aside. Dinner with friends, book clubs, a community choir. Each yes felt like stitching myself back together, piece by piece. The hole Anna left was still there, but it wasn't consuming me anymore. It was just space. Space I could fill with joy, with peace, with a life that belonged to me. One night, while washing clay from my hands after class, Lena texted me. "Mrs. Morgan, I just wanted you to know. Anna talks about you a lot. She misses you. She's stubborn, but she knows she was wrong." I stared at the message for a long time. My throat tightened. I typed back carefully. "Thank you, Lena. I hope one day she understands. Truly understands. Until then, I'm okay." And I realized I meant it. I really was okay. For decades, I defined myself as a mother. Every sacrifice, every decision, every dream placed on hold. It was all for Anna and Michael. And while I will always love them, I finally understood something I should have known all along. I am more than what I give. I am a woman with a name, a voice, and a life that matters, even when no one is asking for it, and that, I thought, is a beginning worth celebrating. When I look back now, it almost feels like 2 lifetimes. The first, decades of giving, of pouring myself into my children until my cup was bone dry. The second, the moment I chose not to pour anymore, and discovered I could fill myself instead. It's been months since Anna's wedding that never was. I still haven't seen her, not in person at least. She sends the occasional message. Short updates. Pictures from her new apartment. Sometimes a question about a recipe she remembers from childhood. She doesn't mention the wedding. She doesn't apologize. And strangely, that's okay. Because the peace I've found doesn't depend on her words. It depends on me. Michael visits more often now. He brings his kids, who run through my living room laughing, tripping over toys. The first time they came after everything, he pulled me aside in the kitchen. "Mom," he whispered, "I get it now. About boundaries. About how much you gave us without ever asking for anything back. I'm sorry it took me so long to see it." I hugged him. Not out of desperation, but out of love. Real, balanced love. The kind that isn't earned with money or guilt. pottery class, Marisol tells me I'm improving quickly. I've even started glazing my pieces, painting them in deep blues and earthy greens. A vase I made now sits on my kitchen table, filled with fresh daisies I bought for myself. For the first time in years, my home doesn't feel like a waiting room. It feels alive. Sometimes at night I still think of Anna, the little girl who used to fall asleep on my chest, the teenager who begged me for rides to soccer practice, the young woman who once said, "Mom, I don't know what I'd do without you," and then the grown daughter who typed, "Watch my wedding through livestream, okay?" It hurts even now, but the hurt no longer controls me, because I know this. Love without respect isn't love at all. One afternoon, as I walked out of the office, Robert caught up with me. "Dinner?" he asked, smiling in that gentle way of his. I hesitated only for a second before saying, "Yes." Over a simple meal of roasted chicken and vegetables, we talked about everything and nothing. His late wife, my pottery, the way life surprises us even when we think we've seen it all. He looked at me across the table, eyes kind. "Helen, you deserve joy. Don't let anyone, even your own children, convince you otherwise." And for the first time in a long time, I believed it wasn't just possible. It was already happening. The greatest lesson I've learned is this: being a mother does not mean being invisible. Sacrifice is beautiful, but only when it's chosen freely, not when it's expected, demanded, or taken for granted. I gave Anna everything I had. And when she asked me to disappear from the most important day of her life, I realized it wasn't about one wedding. It was about every quiet moment when my worth had been overlooked. So I chose differently. I chose myself. Maybe one day Anna and I will truly reconcile. Maybe she'll understand what it took for me to walk away. Maybe she won't. But either way, I'm no longer waiting for her recognition to validate my worth. Because I know who I am. I am Helen Morgan, a woman, a mother, a survivor of her own sacrifices, and finally, someone who understands that the strongest kind of love is the love you learn to give yourself. And if you're watching this right now, maybe you need that reminder too. Maybe you've been told your love is only valuable when it comes with strings attached. Maybe you've been guilted into silence, into sacrifice, into giving until you're empty. Listen to me. You don't have to burn yourself to keep others warm. You are allowed to set boundaries. You are allowed to demand respect. You are allowed to live for yourself, without apology. Because love isn't proven by how much of yourself you erase. It's proven by how much of yourself you're willing to honor. So if my story touched you, share it, leave a comment. And please, subscribe to this channel and help us reach our first 1,000 subscribers. Every bit of support means the world. Because sometimes, the most powerful stories aren't the ones about falling apart. They're the ones about finally standing tall.